Hi everyone in cloud computing, and welcome to episode 6 of the Cloud Computing Australia show with Brad Nelson and the world's #1 cloud industry expert and thought leader, David Linthicum. This show is sponsored by Nelson Hilliard, cloud computing recruitment specialist, placing great people in cloud, IoT, fintech and AI. This week's show is about the Macquarie Group and their Arturo project, which has seen it migrate over 100 production apps so far to run on the AWS public cloud infrastructure. And I'm fortunate enough to have David with me, and it's great because there's lots of questions here around this, Dave, as we know. So how you been, Dave? It's been a good week so far?
It's been a great week so far, and the Arturo project is in Australia, and they've migrated 100 applications, which, by the way, is more than most of the U.S. companies have done in the last couple of years. And so, this is actually pretty good progress. Most people think 100 applications. I've heard people migrate 1,000 and 2,000. That's really not the case. Cloud computing is not as far along within the enterprises as people think. And they've migrated applications, but typically to non-production environments. And they're still dealing with security stuff and governance and monitoring and management. So nothing has gone into production yet in most of the Global 2000 companies that I deal with. However, these guys seem to finesse it to get 100 applications into production, which I think is great, because if you can get 100 applications into production, you can get 1,000, you can get 2,000, and that probably may be the number of applications that they have. So they'll probably quickly reach kind of what I call a functional limit. In other words, where they get the number of applications migrated to a point where it doesn't make sense to migrate any additional applications, just uneconomically viable or untechnically viable to do it. So they could be kind of at that saturation point in 2 to 3 years, which kind of puts them in, I say, the top 5% of companies out there that are migrating to the cloud.
Yeah, exactly right. And where would you say, how are they going to lead the way, the successes for Australian companies? I mean, there's a drive for Australian companies, and are they going towards the AWS platform for that, would you say?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's going to be AWS in Australia. It's going to be the most popular platform. You do have Alibaba Cloud, what we call Ali Cloud now, that started coming on strong, and I think some are going to opt for that. But the reality is that Australian firms are aggressive, but they're conservative, and they like to go with the market makers, and AWS seems to be that. And they also have the services they need to get the migration into the cloud. So going forward, we're going to see more demand for this in the Australian-based companies because of the success of other companies. You have to remember that cloud computing is not just about cost reduction or becoming more efficient at operating your computing environments. It's ultimately about changing your company systemically to be better at moving into market, it's agile, the ability to change things quickly. And that's ultimately going to be the value, I think, that these folks really kind of find out. And I think through this project, really as a jumping off point, they're going to do what all my clients do. They come to cloud for the cost savings, but they stay in cloud for the agility and the time to market benefits. And once the Australian companies kind of realize that this is a way that they can strategically change the way their company does business, a la Uber, a la Airbnb, a la Netflix, and all the other market and disruptive technologies out there, we're going to see a massive movement into cloud and a massive investment into cloud, not necessarily because they're looking to reduce costs, but because they're looking to improve the business. And I think that's healthy. And I think the country of Australia is going to benefit from that. You're going to see gross national product go up. You're going to see companies really kind of, sail in terms of inflecting in terms of their value in the business, sales and marketing folks, and the ability to kind of sell inside and outside of the country. And I think you're moving to that kind of economy. And I think Australia sees this before any of the other countries out there. You can look at that based on the behavior and their aggressive movements in the technology field. And this is just the first instance that we're going to see.
Yeah, I agree. Australia has really embraced the cloud in so many different ways. Only last week the ASX has embraced blockchain to get out of its original platform, Chess, for its equities market. So that should be interesting how they embrace that. But you're right. I mean, Ali Cloud has really come speeding up behind Google, but now has in effect knocked Google off its second space in the world of the cloud wars. So it really is, or could be, more of a contender, couldn't it, in the near future for the APAC, especially the APAC region sitting where Australia is.
Yeah, I mean, Ali Cloud is basically replicating the features and functions that AWS provides. And AWS, as I noticed in the last reInvent, they're focusing up stack. They're focusing on the platform features. So machine learning, database systems, And those things are important, but ultimately, what enterprises typically care about in migrating the first wave of applications is the core capabilities infrastructure. So it's storage, compute, networking, monitoring, management, and security. And so if Apple Cloud is able to provide those features, they may never be an Amazon in terms of matching with, feature function capabilities of that particular platform. But as long as they don't do something stupid in building a architecture that's not necessarily going to get into the enterprises, they can own a big share of the businesses because people probably don't really care what cloud provider they use as long as it works, and they're going for the cheapest, most optimal solution. If it's Ali Cloud, guess what? They win the business.
That's right. I mean, the Artorial project from Macquarie Group has been going on for, I think, over 2 years or so in its from its conception and to where it's at now. And I think they've come good with letting everyone know what they're about to do or what they're doing with regards to moving so many apps to the AWS public cloud infrastructure. And I think it was because they've got more. It was the element of that risk management they had, wasn't it? And the security processes that are involved, because they have so many, as a financial institution, they have so many compliances to, I think it's the 215 or so compliances that they have to adhere to. And that takes time. So it's very interesting that it's taken that amount of time to get to this stage, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. And the reality is that those sorts of things slow down the process tremendously. So the banking clients that I have and the people who are highly regulated, healthcare business, things like that, all of these compliance issues really kind of slow down the migration to the cloud. So it's actually, if they did this in 2 years, that's in pretty good time relative to some companies that have very few compliance issues to deal with, who take 2 or 3 years just to get 50 applications into non-production based systems. So they were kicking at that point. I assume that they didn't, cut any corners, and they made sure they're doing all the risk mitigation stuff and make sure they're adhering to all the compliance rules and regulations, things like that, both nationally within Australia, but also internationally, which they have to deal with as well. So that becomes kind of the point of blockage for most companies out there, as they're migrating into the cloud. Number one, it's a point of blockage in the fact of the attitude that they think they can't migrate to the cloud because of the compliance issues they have to deal with. But the reality is you can get around those things. You can automate, you can create security, you can create governance, those sorts of things actually can make them more compliant and more secure in the cloud than they were on premise if you play your cards right. And I think that's what they're doing here. So probably in leaving applications on the cloud or migrating applications on the cloud, they improve their compliance, they improve their security infrastructure, and I'm just speculating here, and also improve their agility and time to market advantages. And so it's a complete win-win. There's nothing that's a downside to moving in this direction. Costs are going to be better, agility, time to market, your ability to change the system, hook it into DevOps, hook it into different kinds of systems such as machine learning and deep learning and high-end petabyte scale database systems, predictive analytics, all these sorts of things which are really going to add value to their business. So this is an instance of success, and good to you guys for going out there and being successful. And guess what? All your competitors and lots of other different non-competitors within the Australian market are going to follow quickly. 2018 is going to be the year of migrating to the cloud for Australian-based companies. I see the demand ramping up now, some of the questions I'm getting out of the country and some of the press calls I'm getting out of the country. And so I just kind of see it in terms of the metrics, in terms of the data points that I'm getting, that it's going to be absolutely a windfall for Australia in 2018, 2019. So strap in.
Yeah, strap in. Make yourself comfortable and strap in. Get the gin and tonic out. But yeah, you're right. With the fact that they've migrated everything, that flexibility and speed of being able to adapt for market condition, and like you say, plug in machine learning, it's just going to make such a difference to their overall streamlining and cost-effective nature of the business, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, if you do dumb things on premise and you can do dumb things in the cloud. And so there should be some sort of a concerted effort that we're going to improve things as we migrate into the cloud. So refactoring, rethinking security, rethinking governance, all those sorts of things really should be part of the process. Now, we're assuming that's the case here. If it's not, then the next 6 months we're going to hear some bad news out of the company. Yeah. But as of now, I assume that they're making it there with all the compliance issues, getting the help they needed, and understanding some of the core processes. It probably took them a lot of money and a lot of risk and a lot of political capital to get there, but ultimately they're going to reap the benefits, very quickly. So the ROI out of this, based on the money investment, is going to be, a year and a half, 2 years, and that's going to be excellent for this company. And specifically in the fact they're able to get into some strategic businesses and move their IT in a quicker, more faster, speed of need pace, that they're going to benefit from this substantially.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for another great week on the Cloud Computing Australia show. Always great to have your thoughts and opinions on this story, and it's a great story. So thanks again.
Welcome. You guys move the cloud as quickly as you can. I'll be waiting.
Excellent stuff. Well, thanks very much for watching, and remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on our weekly cloud computing shows. Also, you can catch the weekly cloud computing news. Also, David is on Twitter, which is @David Linthicum, and myself, I'm on Twitter too, which is Nelson_Hilliard. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for next week's show.